In this video, I'm going to show you how to write a risk assessment. So for a risk assessment, you should have a table consisting of 4 columns: the hazard, the risk, the control measures that you are going to take to prevent that risk from happening, and the emergency actions that you would have to take in an emergency. Hazards are normally the objects that you are using in the lab. For example, for my first hazard, I might write Bunsen burner. And in the risk column, I would put the risk that I have from using a Bunsen burner. So in this example, I will put the risk is burning yourself. And in the control measures, we need to write about what we would do to prevent the risk from happening. So things such as tying your hair up, things such as using the safety flame when not in use, and you could have other things like keeping the Bunsen burner on a heat-proof mat in the middle of the table, for example. And now you need to write your emergency actions for what you should do if the accident happened and you burnt yourself. So if you burnt yourself, you need to run your burn under cold water for at least 10 minutes. Okay, and for another example, we might be using acids. And a risk for using acids would be that it would irritate our skin. And to prevent ourselves from irritating our skin with the acid, we would do things like be careful when pouring the acid, we would use just weak concentrations of acid, so they're not corrosive or very irritant, so we'd use weak concentrations. Okay, and also generally being careful with the acid as we walk around the room, and leaving the acid in the middle of the table so it doesn't fall and splash all over ourselves. And an obvious one for this one is, of course, wearing safety glasses as well. So there's lots of things that we could put here. I'll just draw a pair of safety glasses in there, okay, to remind ourselves that that is also one that we could put down. Emergency action, if we had acid on our skin, would be to run under cold water as well. So you should be able to think of a different hazard to be able to put in this final row along here. So we could use one such as hot metal. For example, if we heated up metal, we would then have hot metal as a hazard, and the risk with the hot metal would be burning ourselves again. And for hot metal, you might think about the equipment that you'd use to handle that metal. So we would say, do not handle with bare hands. And we would put use tongs to handle. And also we would put something about placing the metal on a heat-proof mat. And finally, our first emergency action for burning ourselves is the same as the top one, so we're running underwater. For at least 10 minutes. So when writing your risk assessment, you need to think about all of the hazards involved in the practical that you're doing. Some might involve Bunsen burners and hot things, hot water, hot metals. Some might involve acids. And there are also general hazards around the lab, like leaving stools out. So you should put your risk assessment into these 4 columns, outlining the risk of the equipment you're using, the control measures, so what you are going to do to stop that risk from happening, and then finally, if that hazard did present an accident, what you would do in an emergency.